Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Friday, April the 2nd, 10:30 segment. First Friday of the month, we get caught up with what is going on with the Community Foundation of the Holland, Zeeland area. Its president, Mike Goorhouse, joining us via the Zoom connection. Mike, good morning, and welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
It has been a year. It has not only been a year chronologically, but it's also metaphorically, it has been a year.
Yeah.
Since everything sort of broke and the Community Foundation had to pivot, had to change some of the things it was doing to help the needs of the community. Looking back, before we talk about some of the things that the foundation is doing now, looking back, what things do you feel the foundation can really be the most, for lack of a better term, proud of? And things that maybe the foundation dropped the ball on and needs, we're going to try to pick up the pieces after this is all done.
Sure. Yeah, good questions. So in general, I'd say what we are most proud of is that we exist for moments like this. So the Community Foundation builds and manages a permanent philanthropic endowment so that we always have the resources to respond to the needs and opportunities that arise. And I've been saying that for years. And I think I've told you, I didn't predict that this was going to happen, but this is the kind of moment why we exist, to take those resources and put them into action. And so I'm really proud, one, that we had the resources there to respond, two, that we dug deep. So we had this endowment. We spent more than our normal endowment spending policy this year because these are the moments that the community needs us. And so we moved fast. We got dollars out the door very, very quickly early on. We did a lot of grant making, almost twice as much as we would normally have done in a year, which is huge. And then the third piece that I'd say I'd be proud of is I'm really proud of how we monitored all the other dollars coming into our community through various state and federal stimulus programs and plans, and then could be flexible and adjust where our dollars were going based on how those dollars were coming in. There's no question that we've never seen the kind of volume of dollars that have come into our community from the federal government as we have over the last year. So it was important that local philanthropic dollars weren't piling on to where there was already a pot of money. It was saying, okay, now that one's being taken care of, where's the next piece that we can pivot to? And so broadly, Gary, I'd say kind of the volume of our response, the speed of our response, and then the ability to be flexible and nimble based on these other various public dollars are the things that I'm really proud about for the last year.
And the other side of the coin about where perhaps the foundation could possibly do a better job.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that question externally because internally, there's no question that managing the kind of staff and team was a challenge this year with everyone kind of going virtual and whatever else. So as president, I kind of do the internal and the external. So on the external side, I think earlier on we could have done a better job of making sure that resources were accessible to those in particular where English wasn't their primary language, if I'm being honest. Though early on, everything was changing so fast and so furious that a lot of the programs, initiatives, and things that were available were not being translated. So people, many in our community didn't know where to go to access help or how to get through to get unemployment this or access that. And I don't think we did a good enough job early on investing. The foundation could have invested more in efforts to make sure those things were translated, to make sure people had access to them. That was one. And then probably the second area is, I think if we had known that the school thing was going to kind of carry on as long as it did. Now, many of our districts have been in person, which is very helpful, but roughly 25% of our kids in the Holland, Zeeland area have been virtual for a whole year now. If we'd have known that, I think we maybe would have front-ended some investments to try to help that situation more. If I'm being honest, we thought it was going to be virtual till the summer, and then we thought by the fall things were going to be back. And then when fall started, we thought, well, in a couple months it'll be back. And So with hindsight, I think a lesson learned or an ideal scenario would have been to probably put some more resources earlier on into making sure the virtual learning was going better for students. But we, like many, we just didn't realize it was going to kind of carry on this long.
395-1450 if you have a question for Mike Goorhouse. He is the president of the Community Foundation of the Holland, Zeeland area. We'll touch upon a few subjects, and of course, we always want to try to end our conversation, our segments, how people can be involved with the Community Foundation and help the Community Foundation with their giving, and we'll give them the opportunity to find out more about that. But first of all, a couple of things that we need to touch upon with you, Mike, talking about this line of credit extension. We're seeing more extensions with some of the other things involved with the outbreak. Why not extend the line of credit that the foundation has been doing?
Yeah. So this was a new thing that we did starting with last spring. Was the foundation gives out grants where we give resources to nonprofits to use for programs, but we also have our assets here that we invest to generate those available dollars for grants. And so we decided to extend some of those assets in the corpus to guarantee lines of credit for nonprofits so that they could have working capital. They would eventually have to repay it, but they would have working capital over the next few years to be able to do their work and then pay it back over time. And so we actually just recently extended a line of credit guarantee to Good Samaritan Ministries for their eviction diversion program. They're calling it something different this time around, but they just received a very significant award from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority through Federal CARES Act money that will allow them to do eviction prevention work. But the way the model is they work with families to pay back rent that they're behind on, but then they don't get reimbursed from the state until later. So they have close to $750,000 that they're going to be spending, and then they don't get reimbursed till later. So it's a perfect use for the foundation. So we could help guarantee a line of credit. They would have the cash to be able to do the work. They'll get repaid from the state later, that they can use that to pay us back, or pay the bank back that we've guaranteed. And it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's a perfect use of our assets to help them do their project and work, knowing that they're going to get the repayment from the state eventually. Just allow them to get going really quickly. So they actually launched that program on the first day it was available because they had access to cash and because they had planned, versus having to wait a few weeks or a month. And so that's one example. A second example is we also just will be announcing in the next couple of days a line of credit to Jubilee Ministries to do some affordable housing work. So it's a $250,000 line of credit where they will purchase some property to build some more housing, and we're excited that we can help them front the cash on the front end to buy the property, then build the units, and then when they sell the units, then they will pay us back on the back end. So another example of us using our assets that will eventually get repaid to us, but to help them spur some activity that is really good. So I just wanted to share those couple examples because it's different than the grants, but it's also really important and helpful to our nonprofit partners. Kind of one, Jubilee on affordable housing, and then the Good Samaritan Ministries around, kind of basic rent, eviction diversion work, which are two. We're really excited about doing both of them.
The other thing that we want to touch upon in terms of an update, but we'll do that in a moment. If you have a question for Mike Goorhouse, he is the president of the Community Foundation of the Holland, Zeeland area. He'll take it at 395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with Mike.
Well, good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I'm pretty sure that Mike knows that grant money from either the state of Michigan or the federal government only comes from taxpayers, and it would seem to me the Community Foundation would be prudent to petition and urge the state of Michigan and the federal government to let more money stay in the community to begin with. I mean, those people who are behind in their rent, for instance, perhaps if their taxes were lower, they wouldn't be behind on their rent. Government has no money unless it comes from the taxpayers, and I think a lower tax rate would be in the best interest of your philanthropic organization. And I'm all in favor of your organization, don't get me wrong. but the government's going to take its cut of the money.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you calling in and naming that. I think it's really important to highlight I think what I heard you say at the core is dollars don't grow on trees. So resources come from somewhere, and local philanthropic prioritization of resources. I think there's an important role for that, and we know on the ground where dollars can be used to meet needs. So no, I would agree with that, and I think we all acknowledge there's a role for government too. So it's a balance and trying to figure out what the right balance is to both. So thanks for sharing that.
I have heard that the government is best that governs least. And it seems to me that as a community, we're better off keeping our money in our community and not letting it go through the swamp in Washington or the swamp in Lansing. So just my 2 cents. And again, I appreciate what you're doing. Don't take this wrong, but
I didn't. No,
charity begins at home, and that's where our money should stay.
I appreciate the call. Thank you. Mike, let me talk a little bit and bring up the Stabilization Fund of 2021. Another round of payments has been done to that to help community people have, some stabilization. That's what the Stabilization Fund is supposed to be about, isn't it?
Yep, it sure is. And these grants, these last 2 rounds have been really, really focused on what I alluded to earlier about trying to complement and come alongside the federal resources that have come. So, the reality is there's a lot of resources coming, and so what we're trying to do is come alongside. So the first one was actually, I mentioned the Good Samaritan Ministries with their eviction diversion program, how we did a line of credit guarantee to help them with cash flow. We also provided them a $50,000 grant to do come alongside folks from a caseworker perspective to not just use the federal state dollars to back pay rent, but to also walk alongside families in a case management. So it's not just, hey, here's the rent's been forgiven, off you go. It's to actually walk alongside folks to make sure they can hopefully not end up back in that situation in the future. So a complementary thing. The feds and state provided the money to back pay the rent, and ours is to help make the program go a step further and do a little bit more for families. Another example with Community Action House, a $15,000 grant. They had an opportunity to pick up more, they call it rescue food. So our local supermarkets and some of our restaurants, but particularly supermarkets, if they have food that's not expired, but that they're going to get rid of, the Community Action House had an opportunity to pick up a couple lines of work. So we helped pay for them to get freezer storage, because this is all fresh stuff. This isn't box stuff. So that they can actually go pick up the food, bring it, have a place to store it, and they can distribute it out to their families. We're talking 17,000 pounds of food per month that they were going to have access to. And I've seen the pictures. I mean, we're talking vegetables, fruit, this kind of stuff that is fantastic. And the families are loving it. The more fresh fruit and vegetables we can get, people really enjoy it. So that was a no-brainer, $15,000 to help them get access to this giant, cold storage freezer that's plopped on their site. If you go over there, you can see it now. And now they make the rounds and pick up all this extra food to rescue it, which was from our standpoint, you can kind of do the math, $15,000 to get probably 6 months worth of 17,000 pounds of food a month. That's pretty good return on the investment there.
I agree. And Scott Rumser, we had him on last month from the
Community
Action House, was talking about the help that he'd gotten from the CFHZ.
Oh, great. Good.
Certainly, it's good to see on both ends. It has been definitely worked out. I want one more topic to talk to you about before we move to how people can help. And that involves the ongoing trial of Derek Chauvin over in Minneapolis and the concerns that we might have some more tensions break out, similar to what we had last year. I know the CFHZ was involved in the situation after Memorial Day of last year, and I would think maybe the foundation with its partner agencies making sure that if there are concerns, it's going to be addressed right away.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, it's an important trial that obviously a lot of people are paying attention to, and for us at the Community Foundation, what we're really focused on is there are unfortunately systems and individual circumstances of racism in our community that we need to care about. So what's going on in Minneapolis obviously has ripple effects other places, but we tend to focus on what's happening here and want to stand and make sure that whether it's education or safety, public safety, or health or philanthropy or whatever it may be, that everyone has an equitable chance to experience opportunities to thrive. And I think that is true right now. There's a focus on public safety and but also on health, right? The disparities around health are real too. So yeah, we tend to focus locally. We support a lot of organizations doing important work trying to work against racism in our community. And
the reason why I brought it up, Mike, is the fact that the foundation was helping organizations in June, July when we had all these the things. So it could happen again.
Yeah, and did another round of grants in January. So we did a round back in June, July last year, focused on racial equity. Our youth did some racial equity grants in January. And this the topic and issue isn't going away, whether it's this trial or other things. It's important for us to be involved to make sure everyone in our community has a meaningful, positive experience and opportunities locally.
And finally, how can people get involved with the Community Foundation? How can they help the Community Foundation help the community?
Yeah, so the Stabilization Fund is still live and active. I had some more grants that we'll share next time I'm on one next month, but we're still collecting donations and distributing those. So focus on education, mental health, and some of the public health response. So that's the easiest way. Folks, if they want to contribute, can give to on our website, which is www.CFHZ, as in Community Foundation Holland Zeeland.org, and there's a link there to give the Stabilization Fund. You also can call in and share your perspective on needs and opportunities that you see in the community. We are a community foundation, and so we're happy to hear from anyone in town about things that they see as important, and we take that input seriously. So either one, contributing with your resources, but also sharing your perspective and wisdom is good too.
By the way, if you want more information, we'll put a link to CFHZ.org on our webpage at WHTC.com when we put the podcast of our conversation with Mike Goorhouse up in a few minutes here on, again, WHTC.com, podcast tab under Talk of the Town, and we'll put the podcast of our conversation with Mike and the link to the podcast, a link to the website in the description of the podcast. Mike, as always, we appreciate your time and telling us what's going on with the Community Foundation. Wish you and all the foundation well over the next month. And if all goes well, we'll talk again in about 4 weeks.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much, Mike Goorhouse on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.